Hello my fellow Hetalians and welcome back to Heta Mysteries. A long time ago I did a poll on what video to do next, and a lot of you wanted nation logistics such as how they age, how they die, what their body parts represent, etc, etc. But the topic was so big, I decided to split this up into separate little mysteries, or logistries, if you will. And since so many of you requested this for such a long time, I decided to finally do the video I have been planning since August. My age theory. I originally had a post on Tumblr about this, but I was not satisfied with my answer. A note, this is going to be more of a theory than a mystery. I'm going to review what we know so far about and draw my own conclusions. This does not mean I am 100% correct, however. When it came to the Holy Roman Empire and Prussia stuff, that was facts. That was using canonical evidence to prove a claim. But since this is not confirmed, and since I am still uncertain about my answer, and I am open to criticism, I'm going to dub this a HetaTheory. This is going to be a long video, so bear with me. For science! Wait, no, not for science, for history! Yeah, history. But before I begin, let's establish some ground factors of age. This is what we know for sure. There is a limit. We do not see elderly nations appear. Even with how old the ancient nations get, they still appear at a maximum of around 30 years of age. Unless, of course, they stop being a nation. Let's just all agree on that. We also know that nations do not de-age. When an animal hangs around a nation like Hana Tamago or Pochi, they stop aging as well. A nation cannot die with their nation status, and this is proven by Finland. We know nations are born as babies because of Egypt in this image, and it was part of Germany's birth comic. However, whether they were born as nations or become nations later is uncertain. A lot of what we know about being a nation comes from Nico Nico. We also must remember that Hema may have no rules at all and may just be messing with us. This will be a default for things that we can't explain. And before we begin, there is one more thing that I will not be addressing in this video. Size of a nation. This is disproved many times by the Baltics, Luxembourg, Sweden, Seychelles, Moldova, and many, many others. This does not correlate with age at all, and I don't think it even correlates with height. But then again, England did have a nightmare where Sealand grew taller than him because the Earth's crust had shifted, causing a large mass of land to rise beneath his base. I will explain that later. With all this information, I have narrowed it down to 4 factors. Here are the 4 factors that contribute to a nation's age. Number 1, how long the country has been around. This somewhat connects to age. A nation isn't born an adult or a teenager. There has to be some form of childhood, and every nation starts off as a child. Unless you're Germany. Then you start off from where the Holy Roman Empire left off. Many countries like Greece, Italy, and Egypt also have predecessors. The majority of countries have this trait so that they aren't thousands of years old. And then there's Nico Nico, who became a nation at a certain age, and so that was the age that he stayed at. But it is very important to note that Nico Nico is an abnormality. This is pretty self-explanatory, so I won't be going into that. Number 2, power and status. This seems legitimate. More power, more maturity. Hence why micronations are children. This explains why Civitalia is so chibi. In canon, the reason why Italy is still a kid in Civitalia and not the same age as Spain and France is because he spent time painting rather than conquering. Being conquered by Austria further slowed his development. Being conquered by Spain also slowed Romano's growth. Number 3, dependency and self-sufficiency. I believe this is one of the biggest factors that contributes to age. It is stated in canon that America had a short childhood because he had a fast development and became very self-sufficient in order to become independent. Hence, why such a young nation looks so mature. Greece was a kid under the Ottoman Empire, but grew up after his independence. Cyprus has grown up, but the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, only recognized by Turkey, is still a kid. This is the reason that is stated canonically as to why the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus cannot grow up, and why Turkey wants Cyprus to either recognize him or merge with him. Liechtenstein is still small because she relies on Switzerland for everything. However, there are many appeared exceptions to this rule as well, such as Belarus, who despite ever only being independent for less than 30 years of her life in total, is fully adult age. Many other Soviet countries seem to love to bend this rule as well, such as Latvia, Estonia, and Moldova, as well as Macau and Hong Kong. I will explain Moldova at the end of this video because Moldova applies to all of these rules and is most confusing age-wise. Why are Hong Kong and Macau older than countries like Moldova, Latvia, and Liechtenstein, even though they aren't real countries? Hong Kong's age kind of suits him. He's kind of a teenager, and Hong Kong's a bit like autonomous, and so kind of the teenage age kind of suits him. But Macau looks like he's 18. This could just be because he's tall, but why? This is a combination of the next part and what I like to call the America effect. These almost countries are developed and ready for the outside world and are ready to be self-sufficient. China, however, has yet to give them freedom, hence why they look so mature. This also applies to Belarus. Though she rarely had independence for herself, she shares the bloody history that Russia does because the two were one around that time. She was also exposed to many battles and in many parts of her history was practically independent, causing her to age. Even under Lithuanian rule, the Belarusians were pretty different from the Poles and Lithuanians, thus falling under the America effect. Number 4. Economy. This appears to make sense. Look at Moldova, poorest country in Europe, tiny little kid. Germany, economic powerhouse, very mature. Seems legit. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, if economy affects age, then why isn't Greece 10 years old? Oh, burn! But nations can't de-age. We also know that a nation's economy affects their health as well. It's how they get sick. That is why America is so strong and healthy, and why all the nations had symptoms of illness when the Great Depression hit. But there are instances where economy does shape age. Hut River is a micronation, but is very rich, so he looks a bit older than the others. But Molossia, why does he look mature for a micronation? Molossia is younger than Sealand chronologically. He isn't that big land-wise. No nations recognize him. What gives? I think the real reason that he looks older is because that's just the way he dresses. Actually, when compared side by side to the other micronations, he's no taller than Saborga, who is still a kid, but he's just tall. He just tries so hard to look badass, and he is succeeding. Also remember that this is his real face. Cow in Hong Kong, lots of money. It is also stated that England made Hong Kong age. This is because England made Hong Kong into a very wealthy port. Luxembourg and Monaco, tiny countries, huge money. But then why isn't Liechtenstein older? That is because she depends on Switzerland for almost everything, falling under Faction 2. Though Monaco also relies on France, she was very independent growing up. This appears to be a minor faction compared to the others and does not have much influence, as does the other factions. This has more to do with their physical condition, but it has shown to slightly affect age. Now to show you an example of where they all take place. Remember Moldova? Well, this is where he comes in. Take a look at Moldova. Moldova's history has been around for many, many years, although back then, it was known as Moldavia. People speculate whether Moldova and Moldavia are the same person, or if Moldavia and/or Wallachia are its predecessors. Wallachia is confirmed to be Romania due to Vlad the Impaler being one of his bosses. So, does that make Moldova Moldavia? Moldavia was considered a country for years. I mean, like a long time. So why is he still a kid? 1. Because Hema says so. 2. Moldavia and Moldova are not the same person. Moldavia was technically dissolved in 1859. Let's go into theory. Let's say that Moldavia is an ancestor. Say around 1859 was around the time that Moldova was old enough to take over the country. Moldavia is part of Moldovan history, but the history of ancient Greece and ancient Egypt are part of Greece and Egypt respectively. And yet, ancient Greece and ancient Egypt are separate characters from their modern-day descendants. In order for some kind of sense to be made about this character, Moldavia has to be a predecessor. Moldavia got pretty big, so it would not make sense for it all to be run by a little kid. But what about when Moldova took over? He still looks younger than most micronations. He's been independent for about as long as Belarus. Well, Moldavia unionized itself with Wallachia, Romania, and that is how it disappeared. So Romania pretty much raised his brother for a short time before Russia took him. Then in 1917, Moldova was independent for the first time ever. After about a year, he became dependent again. Only being independent for about a year and not really having to fight any wars himself kept Moldova at child age. Then Moldova was tossed around for a while between Russia and Romania and for a long time was under control of Russia. But then the Soviet Union collapsed and this little buddy finally got freedom. However, he wasn't really mature enough to run his own country. He declared himself neutral, didn't get involved in any fights, and he is said to have the worst economy in Europe. So his shitty economy keeps him from aging today. He didn't have a very high status then and now, so that also contributes to the aging factor. So in conclusion, these are the main factors in order of importance that contributes to a nation's age: dependency and self-sufficiency, status and power, when they were born, and economy. And when you mix them all together, you can just call it prosperity. And prosperity is a very good word to summarize it all. This explains Sealand, because Sealand now has actual land and grew bigger, or at least in England's dream. He became a real country and thus was able to prosper, hence prosperity be a good word. But hey, that's just a theory. A HetaTheory. Wait, no, that's wrong. And that was 1 mark higher on your history test. Thank you for watching Heta Mysteries. A lot of you are probably wondering why I did not address Latvia in this video. First of all, this video was already incredibly long to begin with, and very confusing as well. Second, Latvia and Estonia have really long and complicated reason why they are the age that they are. These rules still apply to them, but it's more of who was born first. So I will explain that in another video. There are also other multiple questions about Soviet Union characters that I would like to address in another video as well. Also, next week is Eurovision week. I will be doing 3 live streams during both of the semifinals and during the finals, and I will be in cosplay for all 3 of those. There, I will also release some information on the visual novel, so even if you aren't a Eurovision fan, it's still very fun to tune in. But until then, keep on studying.